Hello and welcome to My Finance Teacher. Today we're looking at Bitcoin, and this is actually by request from some of the viewers, and this just gives me a chance to thank you all guys for all of the comments that I receive, for the likes that the videos get, and I'm always open to your comments, suggestions, and I'm always interested in your opinion. So hit a like under this video as well if you think it's sort of useful, even just a little bit, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. In terms of the Bitcoin price, actually not that much unexpected has happened over the last several weeks. We have this arrow on the chart pointing downwards. I put this arrow several weeks ago, and Bitcoin price actually oscillates around this arrow, sort of agreeing with our general forecast. And on the slightly longer term, over the last several months, as we've mentioned, Bitcoin has been respecting this descending triangle formation, and this triangle is becoming a little bit narrow at the moment. As I mentioned in a lot of the previous videos, in financial history, these sort of descending triangles, they often break on the downside. There is about 70% chance that price will break down from the descending triangle, and of course there is some small chance, say about 30% or so, that descending triangles will be resolved with a break up, and that is actually one of the reasons why I expect relatively lower prices in Bitcoin in let's say the medium term. That is actually nothing new to those who have followed me for a while. So what I want to do in this video is have a look at actual Bitcoin's history in its previous bear market and see what happens to Bitcoin price whenever it formed this kind of descending triangles. The first case I want to have a look at is late 2013, early 2014. Look at this chart. Doesn't it look really like what happened at the end of 2017 and the beginning of 2018. At the end of 2017 there was a huge run in November, December, and we see a similar thing in late 2013, November, December, huge run up. And then the few months after that, in early 2018, a decline deep down into 70% or so, and the same is happening in early 2014. You see from around the height of over 1200 or something like that, a decline down to nearly 300, over 70% decline. So this is actually really similar to what's happening in early 2018 and currently. So we saw a descending triangle in early 2014 that also actually took place over several months, and what do we see here? The descending triangle broke on the downside. Price respects the formation for several months, and then when it just becomes too narrow, it breaks down. The initial break was actually about 35% lower, so that was quite a significant breakdown. The next case I want to have a look at is mid 2014. Again, we see a descending triangle that again took place over several months in all through the summer of 2014, and again, as you see, price respects the formation until it doesn't. Whenever the triangle becomes a little bit too narrow, it just breaks on the downside. The initial break from this triangle in mid 2014 was around 10% lower compared to the baseline of this triangle. And the next example I want to have a look at is mid 2015. In this case, this descending triangle only took just over a month to develop. It didn't take several months, so it's a little bit different, but again, price respects this formation for quite a while until it just becomes a bit too narrow, and in that case, which is a more likely scenario in general, as we said historically, price just breaks on the downside. And look at this waterfall decline all the way from around 270 or so down to that was around $160 or so. That turned out to be the final bottom of the bear market in Bitcoin in 2015. So what happened at that time is, with this waterfall decline and Bitcoin price actually declining for a year and a half by then, a lot of people just got finally disillusioned and simply gave up on Bitcoin, especially with this waterfall decline with such a huge percentage drop. This was actually a final capitulation, and everyone who was even just a little bit prone to selling had done so, and the market was left with almost no buyers, giving it a perfect sentiment for a final low within that bear market. What happened after that is the price gradually moved up over many months until it reached well, mid 2017, right? And we know what happened after that. And that is actually a little bit similar to what I'm expecting to happen in Bitcoin in the medium to longer term. In the medium term, I think Bitcoin is going to drop down significantly, because at the moment the sentiment is not severe enough. There are still a lot of people who are quite hopeful about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in general. For example, Tom Lee is still forecasting higher highs for Bitcoin this year, as well as for Ethereum. I think he recently came out forecasting around 1,900 on Ethereum sometime this year or early next year. So there is still a lot of hopefulness in cryptocurrencies. And for a final bear market low with a capitulation mode, we, I think, need a more extreme sentiment. They say time to buy is when there is blood on the streets. I don't think there is any blood on the crypto streets at the moment. So I think over the next several months we might see that if Bitcoin does break below this support at about $6,000, the next support level is at about $5,000. That's where it's quite likely to go, and that support zone is of course formed by that September high last year. If a significant decline in Bitcoin price over the next, I don't know, few months gives us some sort of desperation, very extreme negative sentiments on the market, then that might actually turn out to be the bottom for this bear market. And over many months after that, again, just as it happened in 2016, I expect Bitcoin to quietly slope upwards under the radar of mass media. So that is my expectation of the medium to long term, and I also want to mention something for the short term. What I see here developing over the last couple of weeks is a tightening in the price range, the volatility diminishing, and that often called by some analysts a coil, kind of a spring being tightened, you see. And very often these coils, these tightenings of the price range, they break with relatively strong violence in either of the directions, up or down. And just based on the fact that Bitcoin has had trouble over the last several weeks to close above this 100-day moving average, I think it's just more likely in the next short term to break significantly down, maybe go back down to this support level at about $6,000. Well, I'd give it maybe 60% chance, although of course there is let's say a 40% chance that the breakdown out of this tightening at about $6,600 might happen to the upside and maybe reach this 200-day moving average at about, I don't know, $7,400 or so. So in the short term, quite soon, over the next week or so, I expect some sort of a violent move in Bitcoin, and I think it's a little bit more likely to be to the downside. If it does happen to the upside, I don't think it's going to close convincingly above the 200-day moving average. So that is my expectation over the medium, long term, and even the short term. What do you guys think? Leave the comments under the video, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Have a nice day.